welcome back to another week's episode of Tcast. I want to do a shout out to Whoop.
Whoop, there it is.
Yeah, Whoop. There, yeah, both of you and I are wearing this IoT biometric device. And I want to say that in terms of their customer service, they were very transparent about how their data is used, how it's analyzed, where it goes, where it sits, everything. And I told them, I'm not making any decision to join your thing until you tell me exactly what's going on with this. And they were very upfront and open about it. And I was right after that, fine, you got me. I subscribed.
Well, I mean, because they're getting data 24/7.
Yeah, and they get more data than even what the Apple Watch puts out.
Right, or Fitbit or any of those, yeah.
Yeah, it's pulling down so much data all the time. It was actually, I'm frankly quite impressed.
Well, I like that. I mean, for you, it even has the climbing feature on it.
Mm-hmm. I used the climbing feature yesterday, and I can actually see over the course of the entire workout the high points of stress.
Yes.
And depending on, it's funny, depending on the route I'm going up, you'll see my heart rate variability is like much higher. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, I did a HIIT workout yesterday because they have the HIIT workout, on there. And so I clicked on the hit that. No pun intended.
High intensity.
Yeah. And it was interesting because I thought I was like gassed, like done, but it was but my heart rate, I thought I was at maybe 150, 160 because I was having a hard time breathing, but I was staying around like the 130 range. So it was like, okay, I need to work on doing more breathing exercises because it was a lack of oxygen more than it was. I thought I was at my max.
No, but you're just not breathing.
Yeah, I'm just not breathing. Yeah. So last night I did the Wim Hof, downloaded the Wim Hof app. That guy from
a lot of breathing through the diet.
Yeah, and I did that and almost passed out, but it was fine. Then I had to go take a cold shower because he's about that.
Yeah, so uncomfortable. By the way, that's the hardest thing for me to do.
But what I liked about Whoop, more importantly, and this is going to be a Whoop episode. Before we do EU, we'll just do a quick Whoop episode. For SEO purposes on TARTLE. Yeah.
Thanks, Whoop.
Yeah. And what I liked about them is their podcast too. So that they have they'll have different engineers or vice presidents or whatever that will come on there and then talk about updates.
That's why
they had a whole thing on COVID.
They got the same vibe we're doing.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah. I listened to the whole thing on COVID and they were asking permission, you don't have to, say yes or no, but they were trying to collect enough data to be able to see with Whoop. Obviously people that are attracted to Whoop live a very active lifestyle. So it's interesting to grab that data set.
Sure.
A lot of people, especially your age, don't even know they have it or they've barely gotten it, especially people that we know it's all about the breathing.
An elevated
which Wim Hof said,
rate.
He goes, last night he was talking about it, not to me personally, but on a podcast, he goes, isn't it funny we're putting masks on when everything should be about breathing?
And how about
we're staying in home when we should be outside in nature?
How about all the cases going up and the people that got it were still wearing masks?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, but I mean, isn't it just funny how the opposite, and then there's no view on taking power or healing yourself?
It reminds me of cancer treatment.
Yes.
Why don't we just take another carcinogenic?
Yes.
My cells are, growing at an accelerated rate that they're mutating, and there's a lack of oxygen going in there. It's, high acid levels, everything like that. Let's just hit it with something else that's really
that's really hardcore. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, two poisons hitting each other.
And let's just topple fast food onto that.
Yeah.
Put that in your cellular level.
And stay inside the hospital.
Yeah.
Don't go outside. Don't go in nature.
Stay in your home. Don't go out. Yeah. Don't get any vitamin D, no zinc or magnesium or vitamin C, none of that stuff.
That's why I've been drinking the San Pellegrino.
Yes.
It's like a liquid vitamin.
Yeah.
So
there's
the
a lot
total
of
dissolved solids in this is actually quite high.
Yeah. And that's what we'll talk about on the next episode.
Yeah.
Where they're from.
Yeah. But, so what did you want to get into the EU? So you said you're just going to tee me off on this.
No. Really what I want you to understand is where your Pellegrino water actually comes from.
Yeah. Tell me where it comes from.
No, this will be interesting.
It says bottled at the source, San Pellegrino term, Bergamo, Italy.
Yes. So let's talk about Italy.
Yeah. Italy's an interesting place.
So when we look at the European Union, in its own self,
it's 20. So just a little bit of background in case you don't know, the European Union is 27 member nations.
Right.
It is about 443 million people in total, the populace that it consists of. and they had to do about $30 trillion in total GDP.
So as countries are going in and out of the EU, and we're having situations right now, I know especially with, I don't know, what do you call it, Great Britain?
Yeah.
Is that what they call themselves now?
Brexit.
Yeah, you have Brexit going on, and then, I know Greece has had a lot of turmoil with, coming into the EU, and we look at Romania having, Germany's end up flipping the bill for, quite a bit of it.
There's a lot going on. It's so many different cultures and so many different people. They work their own ways.
Yes.
And then they're like, well, why don't you come in here and work like the union works?
Yes.
That's not how we work. And so, they want to be a part of it for the benefits, but kind of like changing their culture to assimilate to. But
having, how many did you say? 20?
27 member nations.
Having 27 small countries compared to having one voice. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the European Union is looking at. We're going to talk about that with data here in a second. But the European Union in and of itself being when it can make laws and policies and be able to reach out to the India, the China, the United States, it can come together as one union. And then that voice becomes a lot louder than, let's say, Italy or Germany,
who may not have, the pull, but as a collective,
as
a decentralized collective, it allows them to have that strength. So for a little bit of background, today TARTLE had a conversation with the European Union and their policy leads for what they plan to do with data over there. Okay. So they have a group that's like the head of data group.
Right.
And what they're trying to do is they're trying to open up the analysis of data, the flow of data from government to business, business to business, and consumer and up, so that people can better analyze it, and then they can then apply that to, functions of their industry, things that are going in with green manufacturing, mobility, healthcare, things of that nature. But the problem is getting all these different, systems together to kind of like join up and speak and share in some sort of feasible format. They don't have anything to do that yet. And it's also very difficult. What they're trying to find in their policy is like, how are we going to incentivize businesses, private businesses, to share information they otherwise wouldn't share?
Right.
Well, if you're an avid TARTLE listener, you would understand that this is quite obvious and it's an easy answer once you start to talk about it. So when having the conversation, it's like, look, economic incentives have to be in place.
Right.
Once you do the main factor, which is they're like, we want to educate our citizens and our businesses on the value of data and controlling it, okay? And knowing how and when to share it. That's kind of their gig, right? And I told them, I was like, it's all well and good to write a policy, but a policy without effective tool is just words on paper.
Right. Well, I think you're right with those two things, to educate and incentivize.
Yeah, you have to.
In that order.
Yeah. And so they're like, oh, we just want to educate. I was like, well, just putting out a policy saying that we're going to have some sort of educational basis won't do anything. It's not going to unlock, like the previous episode where we talked about data sitting in like silos and lakes and warehouses. Right. Unless there's an incentive in place, why would a company share the data if they're not going to receive some sort of annuity stream for it?
Right.
It's in their best interest just to keep it private to themselves. So when you actually go through the educational process, and this is what I was telling them in terms of the policy, and they want to continue to have conversations with us about how that policy actually gets crafted. Right. And I'm quite thankful for it. I think it's fantastic. But I said that you need to always remember, and I had to remind them of this, is that your governments, your businesses do not function. They do not get data, nothing without interaction of your citizens. So at your core,
right,
your focus should not just be on the G to B, right, or B to G scenario between business and governments and sharing public data sets. It should originally start off with the education of the citizens first and helping empower them as a collective, because they're the ones that have the interactions with the businesses and the governments.
Right.
You guys wouldn't have data if it wasn't for them. So if you can open up that sort of sharing and start to build in that culture, now you're going to have a winning solution. And I let them know, is like, you have these certain, they put out a report, and I'm like, okay, these are kind of your friction points that you see with the adoption. One is like, okay, well, one, what's the economic incentive? Two, how do you stop monopolistic regimes? Okay. All the foundational principles of TARTLE, its design, completely inhibit, monopolies, right?
Right?
We open up incentives through getting people economic empowerment by sharing the data.
Right.
And then on top of that, they're like, well, and there's also variability of data sets. Well, TARTLE also has the ability to ingest any type of data. And at the same time, We can ingest data on the machine code and then have it translated so that when a normal person looks at it, it's something that's readable and makes sense. It's almost like you put the nice filter or lens on it.
Yes.
It's like, oh, that's really good.
That makes sense, yeah.
And so in the end, what that does is that increases the amount of sharing that actually occurs. And so, to further the conversation, and they're like, that is very clear. I'm like, I hope it's clear and I hope it makes sense. And they're like, yeah, that does. It makes plenty of sense. And I just reminded them that, listen, we're already in the European Union. Our system is. And the question is, do you want to work symbiotically with us right now? Because we're going to do it with or without you. And we're here and we can do it in an efficient manner, whereas you craft your policy, we help you and we can tool our systems so that it works best for your citizens. Or we can just do it ahead of time and you retool later trying to figure out your policy after it's already been mass adopted by people outside of your control. And then I got silent. Then I got silence on the phone or the WebEx, whatever it was, and sitting there in silence and like, okay, very good. And that's when they said, okay, we want to actually, bring you into, talk about a continued partnership of sharing information and talk about this policy because
right.
The European Union, even though they're extremely forward on their policy with GDPR, right, and that big push that they did with it, and now they're moving into this data spaces, is that they actually lack data. Because it is so forward-looking, like 3 to 5 years in advance, They don't have enough companies that are even doing what they're even thinking about doing. So I said, why don't you just use us as that effective tool so you can test your policy real time?
I love that. Yeah. And so what do you think their biggest concern was? Whether it was spoken or unspoken?
No, their concern, actually they're not really concerned about, all right, I take that back. Their concern is data monetization. They said people are kind of turned off from it. This is great. I'm glad you brought that up. They're like, people in the European Union are kind of turned away from, the whole idea of data monetization. And I said, guys, frankly, that's not true. I was like, all my data here for our adoption has been higher outside of the United States.
Right.
More in the EU and Asia than it is in our own hometowns. So I'm going to have to disagree with you just on pure data alone, that what you're saying about data monetization, people aren't turning away from it. They are adopting it in, floods. And so I thought that was quite interesting. I'm like, and you can hear, this is great. The microphone picking up and you hear like the pencil dragging across the paper. That sound? Yeah. You've ever taken a test?
Yeah. So they were taking notes.
Yeah. They were taking a lot of notes.
Oh, that's good. That's perfect. Yeah. So like when they're expressing this and they, obviously shared this idea of wherever they got it from, maybe their data or assumptions through, it could be, these higher intelligent think tanks and stuff like that they use.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that when they were talking to you that you felt that TARTLE could solve? I know you shared some of them just now, but the main things, like as far as like that would relate to them specifically.
Yeah. I think
with that concern,
the biggest solve for them is education and control of the data. Because TARTLE, the second you begin to join the system and pull it in all your integrations with everything else you use,
right,
that's when you start taking control. And at that point, you choose when to relinquish something. That is huge for them. They think that is just a normal right. It's a right to privacy and it's a right to sovereignty over the information.
Well, we know that they did. They're ahead of us compared to the United States as far as privacy concerns.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And so that was one of their main draws. And so what I did is actually walking through them like, this is how we have solved that. Right. So if you're talking about that concern of data sovereignty and maintaining the privacy, we have this pseudo-anonymous system, which means that you can choose to be as anonymous as you want.
Right.
Okay. And again, it takes that consent approach, which is pretty much what GDPR was built on. If you're not giving consent, you can't use it.
Right.
And so we've foundationally put that into the entire marketplace.
And so, I mean, when you explain that, you probably heard that.
More scribbling. I love it.
Yeah.
It's like when I used to take a test or you hear people writing in a library or something.
So when they're beginning to understand, because it looked like they didn't fully understand TARTLE, as they began to understand it and these puzzle pieces begin, and I can visualize it like coming together during this conversation.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that they were saying that they were excited about TARTLE with?
Well, they're excited to see that we actually have generated enough data and we have created something real.
Right.
That's actually aligning with their policy.
Yes.
That's exciting because for them, they're like, oh, our policy is doing good work. Well, your policy did some work, but we were crafting this ourselves. You know what I mean? We're only now just having the
Free
conversation.
enterprise is working in full effect.
It's working in full effect.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm, like I said, in the end, we're more than happy to work with you,
Right.
but we'll do it with or without you.
Right.
I love dropping the hammer like that.
And so, so the response at the end, what were they? What did they feel proactive?
Oh, they're very proactive. So what happens is I crafted a very large document for them.
Right.
And I took all their documents and releases that they had, and I touched on every single point of friction that they had and what their plans were, and how TARTLE not only aligns with their goals of their roadmap, but also solves a lot of the frictional points that would, prevent any sort of adoption.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What I wanted to do is make sure that when they went in there, I put them in a corner, not in a bad way, but to make things irrefutable.
Yes.
Because I'm only interested in moving the momentum forward and getting things done.
Yeah, and I think what people need to understand is at the end goal for TARTLE is to uplift humanity and for people to take their data back.
Yeah, and I got to tell you that comment, what
Right.
you just said, it was very refreshing to hear that coming from a government entity. And I don't know these people. I really don't. They're strangers as a collective, but it actually felt genuine. There was nothing. The conversation wasn't armchair quarterbacked. It didn't feel like much negativity came from it. Actually, there's no negativity at all. They weren't fighting us on any points. It actually felt like people trying to learn and do better. And it was refreshing to me to actually hear that.
Did they have a different language, or
they all speak multiple languages plus English.
Yes.
And then I'm like, I am a useless bag of meat.
Oh, that's so interesting. So, as far as when you look at TARTLE and you look at European Union, and as we're growing over there as it is now, what are your hopes, looking a year to 3 years out with TARTLE and EU? What would you hope that would happen?
Oh, that's good. I would hope that the partnership between our efforts in policy crafting becomes quite public. And it's not to do that for our own marketing purposes. I want to join efforts with people that think like us. And if you have such a truly egalitarian, humanitarian approach,
Right.
and you're doing it specifically with data, and you command all those resources, it would only make sense to partner with someone so that the voice can be heard.
Yes.
And you can begin to educate, on multiple countries at the same time, and that's how you want to educate. That's how you really want to get the word out there. Because if you get, the vetting with a group like that, no one's going to contend with it either way. It's just what it is.
Right.
And if you're seeing that you're trying to do all that good and you're supported by such a large union of nations to do so, I think that'd be quite a fantastic hope.
Right. And so that's what you're using the future of it being a partnership.
Yeah. And I hope that what we do, taking on our higher moral and ethical values with how TARTLE's designed, even the fundamentals of it, and our educational principles, that continues to help craft the future for citizens outside of what my local perspective is here.
Right.
That means I get to, you and I get to touch the lives of people across the ocean, all over the globe.
Yes.
Because the interactions, they're endless.
Yeah. And I think that's the beautiful part of how TARTLE can come alongside of whether it's a business, a government, any type of identity, as long as we have cooperation for the same principles. And even a business that may be looking at purchasing data from TARTLE, when we look at that section, like you said, where people choose to whether they want to be anonymous or not,
Yeah.
it still gives value, because you're going to give tremendous value to the EU. TARTLE is all about giving value.
That's all it is.
Not just to the EU or the business that's purchasing data, but to the point of the consumer itself saying, here's your medical packet, and I'm going to get a certain a monetary amount for this through, Bitcoin or however, it's approached.
Correct.
I know there's like 100 different. There's one the other day I saw that had like a cat or something on it.
Oh, the dog, the Dogecoin. Yeah, Dogecoin's so funny. It gets me every time. But you're absolutely right. We've never taken the combative approach. Life is, if we truly want to do things properly, it's a function of collective, efficiency.
Right.
If you don't do things that unify, you only polarize things more, and then you inhibit any sort of efficiency, much like a beehive.
Yes, yeah. So to wrap this up, if you had to summarize, if you were standing before the European Union right now,
Yeah.
and you had to summarize how TARTLE not only could benefit the EU, but how the EU could benefit TARTLE and what it's going to do to uplift humanity, what would you, if you had a minute or two, because the podcast is almost done, what would you tell them?
I would say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
No, don't they have wigs? And stuff?
Yeah. They all got their wigs on. I would let them know in the simplest sort of function, and I would rehash this every single time. I would say that the guaranteeing our future in the most positive light, the most efficient utopian light that we would want to craft or could ever possibly craft within our imaginations only happens through the unification of our efforts.
Yes.
And if we are going to take the first step in the unification of those efforts in a world that's becoming increasingly decentralized, increasingly flat in a metaphorical way, then we should start with the thing that we all interact every single day with, completely agnostically if we are, regardless of religion or type of entity, whether we're a business or a human being. And that would be the information we create. If we have the ability to share it and analyze it so that we can create answers at a faster rate that helps secure our future, then I think the very first thing we should do is consider our relationship between a private enterprise here in the United States and the goals set by the European Union for the betterment of its people.
Right.
How'd that sound?
Yeah, it sounds great. What's the first part of the Constitution here in the United States? We the people. Yeah.
Yeah. We the EU. We the TARTLE/EU.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, that's what TARTLE is about. And that's the philosophy that makes us so different from any company that's out there. Is it's about the people and empowerment.
Yeah. And that empowerment, that's in no cheesy way, shape, or form. That's what will literally change the world.
Yes. Changing the world. One data packet at a time.
Oh, that was good. I like that. I actually imagined myself there for a second,
That was good, yeah.
All right.
It's the water.
It's the water. Yeah. Thanks, Italy.
Yes.
Right. See you later, everybody.